Hey there, folks. Ryan Dahl back again with PraiseCharts Live. I tell you, I'm having a good week. Yesterday, I was live with Brooke Lidgerwood. That was amazing talking to her. So encouraging. This afternoon, I'm going live with Joel Houston from Hillsong as well, but sandwiched right in the middle. You always put the best stuff right in the middle. We're talking with a guy named Jon Azzarello about a book that he wrote called You Are What You Worship. Should be interesting. I've got some questions to ask him. Here's the book, You Are What You Worship. If you don't have it, we'll put links in the show notes below where you can pick it up. A great resource for you, possibly also your worship team, really packing some depth behind all the songs that we sing from Sunday to Sunday. So John's here. He's on his iPhone. Let's go with Jon. Oh, there you are. Jon Azzarello. I love your last name, just to start. Like, where does Azzarello come from?
Good, strong Irish name, right?
Is it?
Italian. I'm Italian.
Azzarello. Yeah. Do you have to speak it with like a Azzarello?
That's right, like mozzarella.
When you're having a pizza. So I got a good friend local to me. He is more Italian than you could know, man. He's got the pizza oven in his backyard. He's a big social, big personality. If he's listening, he's going to get me in trouble. But that's awesome. The stereotype of Italians. But hey, we need people to bring energy and bring it to us, right? So
yeah. Well, man, Ryan, thank you so much for having me on, man. What an introduction too, sandwiched between two like massive superstars from Hillsong.
I know.
And
seriously,
so,
right?
Man, thanks for having me on.
Well, I'll tell you, to be totally honest, I went into the interview yesterday with Brooke quite nervous. I always get nervous, especially when, people like that. But as soon as she came on, just like when you came on, I felt like, I'm suddenly so relaxed. I'm just talking to another friend. I felt like I was talking to my sister, So she is a tremendous person, super encouraging, and had a great discussion. So
that's cool, man.
But now I'm nervous about Joel. So I've never talked to Joel before, but I've sung his songs and seen him grow up. We're probably about the same age. So growing up through the 90s and 2000s should be fun.
That's awesome,
but
man.
Here I am with you, an author. Look at you. You're an author, man. It's incredible. And actually, this is not your first book. This is your second book. You had two books. So tell me about, just real briefly before we go into your book, how did it come about that you decided you wanted to not just sing songs, but, teach and write and help other worship leaders think more deeply about what they're doing?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, Ryan, I never really thought of myself. I've never even set out to be an author. This was never an ambition of mine ever. So probably around 2020 when everything kind of closed down, man, God started teaching me some things and working in my heart. And I mean, there was stuff there already, but so much stuff that I was just like, man, I have got to share this. I've got to say something. There was a fire in my bones, like Jeremiah.
Mm-hmm.
And man, but I had no outlet. There was nothing. We weren't meeting. There was no church. There was nothing. And so, man, I just felt like God kind of impressed in me, hey, just put it all on paper. Just start writing it down. And I mean, it wasn't until probably 3 chapters in that I was like, oh, hey, I'm writing a book. I was just getting this stuff out. And man, I just kind of was obedient. I was like, man, nobody asked me to write a book. I'm not, whatever. And I just kind of put it out there, and the response was better than I thought it was going to be. And I'm just super thankful that God has used it in the way that He has. And so that kind of just man, it just sort of lit a little bit of a fire in me. And so that sort of spawned the second book. And which is the one you just showed, The Greatest Worship Leader. And man, I am very passionate about worship leaders and developing them and worship ministry. I believe in it and the importance of it. And I've always written songs, and so it's like, man, there's some things that just need a little more unpacking, than putting
Hmm.
it into a song. And so this is just
Hmm.
kind of like a really extensive, version of writing a song, I guess.
Well, why don't we dive in to the second one a little bit here, since that's going to be the focus of our time. And like I say, I do have a copy of the book here. I spent this morning just going through it and pulling out some great quotes and thoughts. We can't cover everything, but it would be good, I think, if we could just start at the beginning. And I want to tell you a couple of things I really do like about it. One theme I loved is this sort of a phrase of beholding and becoming, just trying to like get a grasp as to what is it that we're about, what are we doing as when we are worshiping, even not even talking about leading worship right now, not talking about the worship leader, but just people worshiping. What is it about? And I just loved that kind of simplicity and yet complexity in behind it of the two sides of the coin, beholding and becoming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's just kind of like in our design. I mean, you said it, Ryan. It's worship, singing and music is like one small little kind of component of worship, and worship is
Yeah.
so much bigger. Worship, this idea of, and really kind of like the title of the book is like, you are what you worship, is that, man, what you set your worship on, what you set your gaze
Mm-hmm.
on,
Mm-hmm.
it's transforming you. It's making you become more like it. And it makes just perfect sense that Jesus is the person we could never be, right? He's the image of the invisible God. He was the perfect image, and we're all fractured and broken. And when we worship Him, truly, the
Yeah.
fruit of that is that we become more like Him. And that seems like really a simple thing, but I think that we've sold the idea of worship and sacrifice a
Yeah.
little short, and
Right.
thinking that it's like, hey, yeah, the fruit of my worship is that I listen to, K-Love, and I
Yeah.
go to church, and I
Yeah.
go to small group, and I serve at the nonprofit, and I listen to sermons or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, the fruit of like a heart that is truly worshiping is that you're going to become like that thing. And so, I mean, that's ultimately like sanctification,
Yeah.
right? It's ultimately becoming more like Christ.
Yeah.
And I sort of just kind of unpack a lot of that, and it's beholding Him and just having the gaze of our heart on
Yeah.
Him, that transforms us to become more like Him.
Yeah. It's beautiful. John, I've definitely spent some time in the last year or so. Like I am a worship leader as well, have been for many, many years. But even in my role at PraiseCharts, I've thought like, why are we doing this? Why are we selling all these songs or putting out all this music or all these research, all this lyrics, all the chord charts, all that? What's what's like the end goal of this? And I love the concept of fruit is really really important to me. It's like at the end of the day I can you know help people get songs, but the hope is that somehow somewhere along the journey it's going to transform actually how they live. It doesn't matter, the lights, the smoke, the sound, the key, the tuning, all of that is still short of the real end goal is your fruit. And I think when we talk about fruit, we're just talking about becoming like that person that we are worshiping, right? So that's really
Yeah,
important to me, and thinking about even why we
absolutely.
function as praise charts. It's we're trying to change lives, like
Yeah.
make people changed.
Yeah, and you are. I mean, it's such an important
Yeah.
thing, is that like, man, singing is like in the Bible over 400 times. I mean, it's a huge part of that, God doesn't just want, I mean, and I kind of talk about this in the book, but this idea of like, God doesn't just want your mind, and He doesn't just want your hands, He doesn't just want
Yeah.
your works or this or that. He wants your affections. He wants your whole heart. And I
Yeah.
mean, all throughout the Bible, I mean, in the prophets, like in Ezekiel, it's like people gathered around and they loved to hear all of these sermons, and they gathered around, but God was like, no, I'm not really interested in your worship because you guys are missing the heart of it.
Right.
And then the same thing
Right.
in Amos 5, like all of the same stuff. And it's like the same thing. God would always get at their heart and be like, hey, you guys are missing the most important part. You guys are like, you're walking past all of these starving orphans and these hungry, and the poor people and the people who are naked. Um, and all you think that I want is these like rituals and religious things. And he's like, no, I want your heart. And so
Yeah.
it's so much more important. But music, and really like Ryan, what y'all are doing at PraiseCharts, I mean, music is like the language of the heart. And it's
Yeah.
like, man, it stirs our emotions. God doesn't only just want our minds and things that we can check off a list. It's like, no, he wants so much more. He wants our passion and our desire. And music, man, can cut and penetrate straight into where words can't do.
Yeah.
So
Good.
important.
I wonder if we could let's just talk to those of us who are worship leaders and worship pastors and just really thinking about how our role might be unique from the senior pastor or the associate pastor. Like there are these roles, the teaching pastor, but we've got unique roles to play in the church. So let's just think about that a little bit, because on some levels worship just embodies the whole gospel. It's, beholding who God is and understanding the nature of what Christ has done. And a lot of those things, I think, well, my pastor also is helping us teach through all that, or, discipling us. But what's that what's that unique mantle that's placed on me as a worship leader? And how can I think, deeply enough about that so that I'm constantly just not just picking songs, not just putting a great service together, but I'm just really thinking about what's the thing that I'm bringing to the table of this pastoral team that is unique as a worship leader. Help me
Yeah.
grasp that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how much time you got. There's so many things, right? And I mean, this as a
Yeah.
worship leader, like, um, obviously there's a shared kind of like a joint effort. We're all kind of turning the diamond and we all have sort of a role in the same thing. We all want our church to go on this journey, and connect them and their hearts and their passion and their minds, everything with the love that Christ has for them. And by the power of the Spirit to respond by like, living their lives, not just 1 hour a week, but for the other 99% of their weeks, to
Yeah.
go and to live as Christ did, to lay down their lives for their neighbor. And this is something that I think so much more than just a song and just connecting, with a song, is that you are connecting. You're like I heard Andy Rozier say this one time, and I actually put this in my book too, the chapter about
Hmm.
this, where he said like worship leaders are tour guides. And like specifically, we are like going on a tour. And he told this story, which I thought was a really profound metaphor of going to Israel, and he's on this tour of like the Holy Land tour, and the tour guide is pointing out all of these awesome landmarks and saying like, hey, this is the garden, this is where Jesus prayed, and this is the tomb and all these things. And of course, every time he would point something out, everyone would take a picture and all that kind of stuff. And then when he got home and was showing all of these pictures to his family, it's like he realized, and he had this like epiphany. He was like, hey, um, the tour guide, I know all of these things, and I have all of these like emotions and affections for God even more. But the tour guide isn't in any of these pictures because it wasn't about him. He was
Yeah.
like highlighting all of these things and like connecting me and taking me on this journey. And
Yeah.
I think as worship leaders, we have a really cool opportunity to engage with people emotionally. And I know like in
Yeah.
some streams that's like hey, you want to be careful, it's not like an emotionalism type thing, but it's like,
Hmm.
man, God does want your heart. And we're able to connect and engage with people at a heart level, to where people can really just resonate and be like, yes, like God is so worthy of all of my praise, all of my affections, all of my passion. And we get to do that in such a deep, unique, like heart level kind of a way. And I think
Hmm.
that's really a unique kind of role. But I mean, honestly, like worship leaders are teachers. I mean, we're yes, we're stirring affections for people, but also we're like on the front lines of battle, leading people in a spiritual battle. I think
Hmm.
this is such a unique season, right? Like so many
Hmm.
people are coming out of this like isolation period of feeling depressed and anxious, and after being alone and isolated and fearful. And I think worship leaders have this opportunity to like lead into spiritual battle, because music is spiritual battle. I mean, think about
Yeah.
King David, like David and King Saul, when David played his harp to drive out the evil spirit. And um, I mean, we could go on, right? It's like nothing
Yeah.
is more unifying than worship when we sing together. There's
Yeah.
literally scientifically nothing more unifying than in your own brain, like human
Yeah.
activity, than to
Yeah.
sing.
Yeah.
And so like when we can sing, we're like uniting people together, and we're uniting,
Hmm.
like hearts and minds and bodies. All of these things are coming together, and this is what Christ wants from us,
Hmm.
is unity. So many unique roles. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
So many.
it's yeah.
Well, I do like what you're saying. You sort of, towards the end of your book, you talked about that aspect of harmony and community. And I actually think that's something quite unique that worship leaders bring to the table on a Sunday or a Wednesday or whenever. Unique from a pastor who, if you're preaching, it's really still kind of I mean, yes, we're listening together and we're there together, but we're just kind of like, we're still individually listening. But uniquely so, when we're singing, it's a corporate experience. It's a corporate active
Yes.
act of community that is very,
Yes.
very unique, very special for people. The emotions are being unlocked together. We're singing together. We're standing together. We're hearing each other. It's a unique part of what happens on a Sunday, and it has a powerful impact for sure. Like you had said, I like this quote: "Songs are like sermons that get stuck in your head." That was one that came out of your book, but it's true that, I mean, sorry, pastors, a lot of people are going to forget what you're saying 3 hours
Yeah.
later, but they'll still be singing the song on
Totally.
Tuesday, right?
Yes. 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 Yeah, I
So,
heard somebody say once that songs, they catechize us.
yeah.
They teach us. Like before you're.
I'm not sure how we lost his voice. Did you go mute? Oh, you muted yourself. Ha! Oh, he's coming back.
Am I back?
Yes.
You got me
Yes.
back?
Gotcha. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm not
Gotcha.
sure what happened there, but
All right.
yeah, just the idea that songs, our theology comes so much from our songs, the songs that we sing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, worship leaders and the songs we write, the songs we lead, they're teaching people how to view God and how to view life from a lens that is like biblical, and that kind
Yeah.
of speaks to how, we should view God and how we should view life,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just so important.
Very beautiful. I know a lot of times when I lead worship, if I share a few words in between songs or leading it out, I'm thinking about how to leave a deposit with someone. Maybe I just reflect on a lyric or a phrase, but I'm just knowing that there's possibly going to be a phrase that will reverberate from this worship set that I just did. That's going to reverberate through the week, and I'm just kind of aware and conscious of that. I think about songs like "Christ Be Magnified." Oh, that was a word like from
Good song.
Cody Carnes, right? I love "Christ Be Magnified." 3 words, and out of all Sunday morning, if you could go home and just like contemplate those 3 things, 3 words all week,
Yeah.
it'd
Yeah.
be great, right?
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
be that would be like life impacting, like fruit bearing
Absolutely.
types of phrases.
Yeah,
So
because when you magnify something and zoom in, like putting it under a
yeah,
microscope, and it's Christ, it's that verse that's like, hey, whatsoever things are pure and lovely and holy. It's like that's what you're doing when you magnify Christ. You're viewing him,
yeah,
how he
yeah,
lived, and the
yeah,
fruit that came from his life, and that causes us. I mean, in other words, like love, kindness, gentleness, patience, joy,
yeah,
peace. The
yeah,
fruit of the Spirit, when we behold him, comes out of
yeah,
us, right? And
yeah.
that's so impactful. Totally.
Very good. Well, John, I'm excited for your book, and just those of you who are listening in, you can go to jonazzarello.com. That's where you have links to all of these. The Greatest Worship Leader, which we didn't talk about, perhaps another time, but this
Yeah.
latest one, You Are What You Worship. And I think this is a great kind of resource that if worship pastors are even looking for something to give out to their teams, right? To say, hey, you know, read this throughout the next couple of weeks, or let's talk about it together, or something like that. Those an incredible
Absolutely. I mean,
resource. Yeah.
that one for sure is like, I think You Are What You Worship is really relevant for everybody because it's like it talks about worship deeper than just music. I think it's like a
Yeah.
holistic approach of worship. The other one, The Greatest Worship Leader, that one is, I think, really helpful for specifically worship leaders and worship teams to go through
Yeah.
because
Okay.
it helps to define really kind of like what success is and what greatness is as a worship leader, because it's easy to define those using kind of the wrong standard. And I think that everybody, like wherever you are, whatever influence you currently have, whatever
Hmm.
skill set you currently have, like you can be great in the
Yeah.
by God's standard, and what He's calling us to. So I think that one is so important for worship leaders for sure.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to put links in our notes below for this video that you can click and grab those. So, Jon, thank you very much for taking the time with us today.
And thank you
And
so much.
look forward to the next book. I think there's probably more coming. So, look
We'll
forward to that.
see.
Okay. Bless you,
Cool.
Jon. Thank you very much. Bye then.
Thank